6 after 8 o'clock, news and views right here on Salam Media. My name is Julie Ali. Welcome to the program. And let's look at the issue around the visit of Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov, obviously to South Africa. He has already met with our Minister of Foreign Affairs, and that, of course, is, he has met already with Naledi Pandor, and they've already started their first round of bilateral talks. So our International Relations Minister, Naledi Pandor, has once again reiterated that South Africa's position for a negotiated settlement to end the war in the Ukraine obviously will be the diplomatic approach, and that was obviously high on the agenda. We also know that the Ukrainian um, diplomats here in South Africa were not very happy at all about this visit, and we also know that certain sectors of South Africa were outright against the visit of the Russian foreign minister, almost suggesting that South Africa has now taken sides and are supporting Russia in their invasion of the Ukraine. Not so, says Naledi Pandor. We believe, she says, as South Africans, we are all for the diplomatic approach. A very good morning to you, Professor Garth. Welcome to the program, and your thoughts on this matter.
Well, it occurs, at a very interesting time in our foreign relations. And I think there are three considerations that are relevant here in terms of the minister's logic justifying South Africa's neutrality in this matter. And neutrality has to be used advisedly. So there are three considerations. The first is, South Africa's historical relations with the Soviet Union, or the ANCs, shall I say. The kind of ideological support and the affinities that the ANC enjoyed with the Soviet Union at the time of the struggle for liberation. Now, it's very important to note that this is a party position that has now officially become, de facto a South African position. There are many South Africans, as a recent poll makes clear, that are not in favor of this kind of close association between South Africa and Russia. As a matter of fact, 3/4 of them, according to a Prentice opinion poll, condemned the invasion of Russia in Ukraine. 80% of them hold the opinion that South Africa should not support a country that invades a neighbor. So that's the one dimension. The other dimension is the BRICS consideration. South Africa is a member of the Brazil, Russia, India, and China group, which is a very important consort of emerging powers who are increasingly, changing the tenor and the texture of international relations. As a matter of fact, it's important to note that South Africa will host the BRICS summit this year, and I suppose South Africa's position is that it is very important to maintain the internal coherence and the solidarity within the BRICS group by not being seen as an outlier in condemning one of its members who is at war. Also, quite crucially, there's the Russia-Africa Summit, which will happen in St. Petersburg in July, and I think South Africa will feature quite prominently there. So it seems to me, that South Africa is sort of preparing the diplomatic ground to, be quite a presence at that summit. And then the third, very importantly, is that South Africa, in sort of charting this independent course, does not want to be seen to be siding with the West. And there's sort of two interesting elements to this. The first is a joint naval exercise, which is going to take place in the Indian Ocean from the 17th to the 27th. Exercise
right.
must be called with China and Russia. And then the other was, this very mysterious docking of this Russian ship. It's an ammunition supply ship called Lady R at Simonstown, where cargo was loaded and offloaded in the dead of night. I think this is really manifestations of showing that South Africa has nailed its colors to the mast, that it will not follow, the positions of the West, even though, the sanctions against Russia are internationally accepted and they are enshrined within, the United Nations and international law. So those are sort of initial considerations behind South Africa's disposition towards Russia.
I spoke to an analyst yesterday about those China and Russia together with South Africa that are going to undergoing those, the drills, as you've alluded to now. I'm kind of wondering, even though the analyst reassured me that it's just something that is pretty normal with countries that do enjoy bilateral relations, and the fact that South Africa is part of BRICS, I'm kind of wondering how the Western world sees those upcoming drills that are going to happen in February. The marine drills, obviously.
Well, I suspect that it will be looked at with a certain sense of consternation and concern.
Mm-hmm.
One element is that the exercise mostly coincides, the first anniversary of Russia's military incursion in Ukraine, which is the 24th of February. These are taking place in the Indian Ocean from the 17th to the 27th. But there's also the symbolism behind this. What is South Africa? There's nothing wrong with these military exercises that take place among allies all the time. But there is a perceived insensitivity on the part of South Africa. China is neither here nor there. It is our largest trading partner. But to engage in these operational exercises with a country that is at war, a war that is widely condemned as violating international law, is just seen as being very inconsiderate and insensitive to the norms of international law and proper conduct in foreign affairs. And then the other consideration is obviously what advantage does South Africa get out of this? Let's go back to the notorious and infamous $65 billion arms deal, where South Africa refitted its entire infrastructure, including the Navy. And there were 4 frigates and 3 submarines that were acquired as part of that package. Now, word on the street is that there's only 1 frigate that is operational. The other 3 and the other 3 submarines are basically inoperational wherever they are in Simonstown. There are problems in terms of the technical competence of people to maintain them, the manpower. So we probably only have, a constabulary force on 1 frigate. So what is the inherent advantage it might be on?
Okay, it is 8:15. We're going for our first ad break. Please don't go anywhere. Still a few more questions coming your way before we wrap up this interview. Of course, I'm talking with Professor Garth. He's a visiting professor at the University of Pretoria. We're looking at the visit of the Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov to South Africa. So please do stay with us.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness. And every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Once again, winter has made itself known in the Syrian and Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon as well as Afghanistan. Thousands are left to face this bitterly cold season of rain, flooding and snowy conditions. Africa Muslims agencies on the ground empowering families with winter rescue kits. Assist and sponsor a winter rescue kit for only 3,500 Rand per family. Call Africa Muslims Agency now on 011 834 8685 or donate at africamuslimsagency.co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, commemorating 35 years of empowering, educating, inspiring.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
When winter comes, it's more than just cold. For millions of refugees, displaced persons, flood-affected families, and impoverished households, winter is a question of survival. That's why the Al Imdad Foundation is reaching out to deliver winter aid to struggling communities in 14 countries across the globe. Help spread the warmth today by sponsoring a winter pack for 600 Rand. Donate online at www.alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
19 after 8 o'clock, welcome back. I am talking with visiting professor at the University of Pretoria, and that, of course, is Professor Garth. We're looking at the visit by Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov, and, of course, he met with Naledi Pandor yesterday. And in a statement released by Naledi Pandor, she actually indicates, we do know there's been certain sections of the community, business and private communities in South Africa who are absolutely outraged by the visit and the fact that South Africa has allowed this visit to happen. However, Naledi Pandor is firm in her belief of the peaceful, the approach of diplomacy. Questions have also been raised as to whether she's going to be discussing the end of the war by Russia on the Ukraine. What she did indicate is that this is a desire for all of us around the globe, but she also says that we as South Africans believe in diplomacy. Her Russian counterpart, has put the blame for the lack of negotiations on the Ukrainian President Zelensky because he has reneged on the Turkey talks last month. So according to the Russians, it seems as if Zelensky was the one who reneged on those talks. According to what we're reading, it seems, or what we're being led to believe, is that Russia does want a negotiated settlement, but it is Zelensky or the Ukrainians who are not willing to come to the table. In fact, he even goes further to say that President Zelensky signed a decree prohibiting all Ukrainian officials to negotiate on anything with the Russian Federation. So, Professor, your thoughts on the softly diplomatic approach, the fact that apparently, according to the Russians, that Zelensky has reneged on the Turkish talks. Where do we stand on this matter? I guess the whole world were expecting this incursion, this war, to have ended in a short space of time, but it's almost a year on and it is still ongoing.
Yes, let me try and make a few points and try and make them very briefly. The first is, let us look at the essential foundations of South African foreign policy, which is really, grounded in what President Mandela said in 1994, that human rights will be the light that guides our foreign policy. And with that South Africa's foreign policy will be anchored in multilateral cooperation and support for international law and its participation in international organizations centered in the United Nations. So South Africa's moral currency in its international relations is really grounded in what we would call a form of norm entrepreneurship, right? Promoting norms of good citizenship, encouraging cooperation among countries to resolve the problems of the day, whether it be in climate change, whether it be in trade, whether it be the peaceful settlement of disputes, etc., etc. However, South Africa's position on Russia contradicts all those foundational elements. De facto, South Africa has become partisan in this conflict by hosting Sergey Lavrov on the pretext that it remains non-aligned, it remains neutral, and it would like to see some kind of diplomatic resolution of the dispute. Now, it's very odd if you think about South Africa's disposition towards, Israel's atrocities in the West Bank, or you think about South Africa's position on Moroccan occupation of Western Sahara. South Africa is unequivocal in the condemnation of Israeli occupation in the West Bank and Morocco's increasingly, hard-fisted attitude towards the Sahara people. And here we have a war, where the suffering, the destruction of life and property is quite egregious. It is very difficult to remain neutral in these circumstances. Yet that is the position that South Africa has chosen. And this is where it comes in for, loads of criticism, justifiably so. So, that is, I think, a very important consideration.
In closing then, Professor Garth, let's look at two issues. The one is this visit by Sergey Lavrov. Does that mean, regarding bilateral relations between the two countries, that we're going to see more and more of our young people possibly going to be educated in Russia? Is that a good thing for us or not? We know what has happened in the past, where we've heard these urgent pleas from students in Russia and elsewhere saying that they haven't received any money from South Africa. The fees have not been paid. They're starving. The Russians don't want to have anything to do with them. They're being evicted from their apartments, etc. Is that going to be addressed as well? And is it a good thing that hopefully more students will go abroad to go and study? That's question number one. And question number two, my final question: how is this visit going to hurt us as South Africa as far as our other Western relationships are concerned?
Well, let's look at the first part of your question. I think it's very important for South African students, to study abroad, whether in the East or in the West. But it must be under conditions, that make studying abroad an interesting cultural and intellectual experience. I'm afraid, given what you said, that the history of South Africans studying in the Russian Federation. And this goes broadly for foreign students. And there's a long history of African students going to study in Moscow and coming away with very bitter experiences because of racism, the lack of support, and so on and so forth. And I'm afraid that this might just be the lot of South African students who go to Russia. As much as Russian universities retain a kind of academic and intellectual pedigree of excellence, and I think the South African government has to look at this very, very circumspectly. Very similarly to South African students who have gone to study medicine in Cuba. It is not easy. And one also has to look at the broad context of South Africa's relations with Russia in terms of trade. Russia is a very minor trading partner of South Africa. Our two-way trade with Russia is something like 17 billion rands a year, compared to, say, for example, with Germany. Our two-way trade with Germany is 280 million. So this is bound to alienate Western allies. That South Africa is making strategic blunders. It is making, diplomatic decisions that do not accord with its initial acceptance as an emerging power that can be a trusted ally and a trusted partner in trade as well as in international relations. So South Africa's international reputation has certainly suffered in this regard, particularly since historically we have had a very important strategic advantage. And that strategic advantage and the normative currency that I talked about has fast depreciated because of South Africa's ambiguity and ambivalence, so-called, towards this war in Ukraine.
Okay, I did say the last question, but just finally, the comment that I made earlier regarding Sergey Lavrov suggesting that it is the Ukrainians that don't seem to want to negotiate a settlement regarding this war.
Yes. Well, there is an element of the foreign minister of Russia being disingenuous here. He's not being honest. How can Zelensky negotiate a peace with a gun to his head? On what basis? What are the terms? I mean, we can go back historically to sort of the Versailles Conference that brought an end to World War II. I think there was a common understanding of the need to reconstruct Europe, but also, to ensure that an international peace that will ensue that is sustainable. So this has to be a negotiation between equals. And right now, the power relations between Russia and Ukraine is very asymmetric. And Zelensky is fighting to save his country. On what basis is he going to negotiate concessions, giving away large chunks of his country? On what basis is he going to negotiate reconstructing a country that has almost been destroyed, by Russian missiles?
Mm-hmm.
There has to be, the terms and conditions have to be set beforehand. And the minister, Sergey Lavrov, is not being honest about what the terms and conditions are. And I'm telling you, Russia will not give up Crimea. That would be an unconditional requirement on the part of Ukraine, that Russia will leave all occupied territories, including Crimea, and then there has to be, a reparations package and so on and so forth. So it's bound to be very complex. So, I think that the Russian foreign minister should show a little more empathy, put himself in the shoes of Volodymyr Zelensky, who has been trying to defend his country under very difficult circumstances, and who has to try and maintain the sovereign integrity of the Ukraine as a member of the United Nations, and not a country that is going to become, after assuming negotiations are complete, a satellite of Russia in that regional neighborhood, as with other countries which are de facto satellites of Russia, such as Belarus and others.
visiting professor at the University of Pretoria, Professor Garth. Thank you indeed for your insights into this matter, the visit of the Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov to South Africa. Much appreciated. Thank you. Go well. It is exactly 8:31 a.m. Standing by to talk with us now is Johan Kruger, Head of Community Sustainability at AfriForum. And all I can say on this matter is that hopefully and finally there seems to be a light at the end of the tunnel. Stand by.